God and praise Him. And mayest thou, with all those who made the supreme sacrifice of dying for others, receive eternal rest and peace. Amen.
The Cardinal has now returned to the throne, and there he changes the mass vestments in preparation to leading the corpse from the church. Take you into paradise. May the martyrs come to welcome you on your way and lead you into the holy city of Jerusalem. Mass is the summit of Christian life, the source of its power, for in it Christ gathers up his brothers and presents them to the Father as one with him, thus offering all honor and glory forever and ever. This Mass has been offered for John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States. May he rest in peace. As the body of our late president is taken now to the cemetery, the church proposes that we recall the words of Christ. I am the resurrection and life. He who believes in me, even if he die, shall live. And whosoever lives and believes in me shall never die.
Outside of St. Matthew's Cathedral, the casket bearing the body of the late president now emerges into the sunshine. Cardinal Cushing now sprinkling holy water over the coffin and kissing the flag. Just behind the coffin now comes the immediate family. Mrs. Kennedy, John Jr. and Caroline. Are now pulling up in front of St. Matthew's Cathedral. A long line of black cars as far as you could see. Children are being taken away, and Mrs. Kennedy, followed by the Attorney General Robert Kennedy, getting into the first car. All one hears is the opening and the closing of doors, the quiet shuffling of feet as the 1,200 invited guests now begin to emerge from the cathedral. Now, President Johnson, Mrs. Johnson, flanked by military aides, followed by Chief Justice Warren, former President and Mrs. Eisenhower, former President Truman and his daughter, Mrs. Clifton Daniel, the only noise that of a plane.
Tony, Sergeant, I cannot hear you because your man is speaking. Just tell him he's got to stop.
Both former presidents conversing. Quiet, gentle church bells heard off in the distance.
Tony, Sergeant, your engineer is making his call.
Senator Edward Kennedy now going over and inviting former President Eisenhower to speak with Mrs. Kennedy, who was still in the first car. And President Truman there as well. It appears as though both former presidents are once again paying their respects to Mrs. Kennedy. Now President Eisenhower, President Truman are being escorted away into another car further down the line in the procession. In the first car will be Mrs. Kennedy, the Attorney General Robert Kennedy, and the Senator from Massachusetts, Edward Kennedy. As far as one can see, in every direction, just rows and rows of very quiet people. You don't notice many people crying. Just overwhelming sadness. Apparently, in the cathedral at this moment are the final preparations, the necessary preparations of protocol for a gathering so large, almost unprecedented in American history. The call to arms as the caisson bearing the coffin of a late president is now drawn slowly by 6 silver-white horses down Rhode Island Avenue toward Connecticut, and the procession from St. Matthew's Cathedral, the solemn procession begins. To Arlington National Cemetery. The 9th car in this procession, carrying the President of the United States, surrounded by 7 Secret Service agents. This car is bulletproof. Now, at the very steps of the cathedral, emerges this huge ensemble of distinguished leaders of many nations across the world. Only those nations in the Chinese Communist bloc are not represented here. In the front, the Emperor of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie, who was here a very short time ago to be received by President and Mrs. Kennedy. She said at the time that she broke her period of mourning for her late son in order to pay her respects to the Emperor. And when the Emperor heard of the death of her husband, he said he could do nothing else but come and pay his personal respects to her. This is undoubtedly an assemblage that historians will note as one of the greatest in the history of the United States. For quiet as that.
Dave Dugan at 17th Street and Connecticut Avenue. The body of John F. Kennedy is making the final journey through downtown Washington. Carrying the dignitaries from all over the world. The funeral cortege was led by a military band playing America the Beautiful.
Hold it steady. Off the truck.
hour for the cortege to make the trip to Arlington National Cemetery across the Potomac River from Washington in Virginia. Kennedy will be buried on a hillside overlooking the Capitol building. Caisson, followed again by the riderless horse. On the way to the cemetery, the cortege will pass around the Lincoln Memorial. On the way to the cemetery, the cortege will pass around the Lincoln Memorial. Caisson is flanked by men of the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Corps, and Coast Guard. The funeral procession is over a half mile in length. The limousines were preceded by military units of all the armed forces. And 24 young men from the Cadet Officer Corps in Ireland made the trip. Secret Service men alongside the car carrying President Johnson. Long, sad procession wends its way through the streets of Washington. Virginia, beyond where Arlington National Cemetery will be the final resting place for John F. Kennedy. It will take at least an hour for the procession to wend its way across Memorial Bridge, over the Potomac River, to Arlington Cemetery. The military units at the head of the funeral cortege. Men and women representing all the armed forces. Men from the Navy, the President's favorite servants. Lieutenant John Kennedy of World War II, being well known the world over. In the background is the memorial to Thomas Jefferson. Many children are watching the procession with the utmost feeling of sadness. Many of them are aware of the fact that young John Jr. was celebrating a birthday today. And this made them feel just a little sadder. For a young child, a birthday is normally the most joyous of occasions. Even the normally strongest of men can't help but brush away a tear from time to time. In many store windows in the nation's capital, as well as on the lips of many people, the phrase that President Kennedy used at his inauguration day, and probably will go down in history as the most famous words he ever uttered. Ask not what your country will do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Forces contingents escorting their late commander-in-chief. Beloved president continues on his last journey through the streets of the nation's capital. This is Dave Dugan on Constitution Avenue.
Jefferson Memorial in the background of our picture now. Brilliantly lighted in the sunlight of a clear late autumn day.
horses, which precede and bear the jet-black caisson, halted momentarily as the line of procession makes the turn here at 17th Street onto Constitution Avenue. The muted, low, staccato clop of the hooves of the 7 white horses as they begin their turn onto Constitution Avenue. The caisson also making its turn. Having moved southward, now having turned westward. Move down Constitution Avenue, past the Lincoln Memorial, across the river into Arlington. The crowd here watching reverently, attentively, sensing, no doubt, many of them, that the caisson rolls now for the final time. Riderless, black horse, spirited, as well he should be. Symbol of the great energies of the man he now follows to burial. Caisson rolling silently onward toward Arlington. A few more blocks, and it will pass Lincoln Memorial. Riderless horse behind it, trotting briefly now. The brake lights of the limousines go on. Military marching units, marching briskly, well in order, now making their turn.
We're working around now.
Oh, I see. I'm not going to stop it.
This is Roger Mudd at the Lincoln Memorial, watching a long view of the funeral procession with the Jefferson Memorial in the background. Preceding the cortege, marching units of the U.S. military forces. Units moving along Constitution, 17th, Henry Bacon Drive to the Lincoln Memorial, and then across the Lincoln Memorial Bridge. The route lined with spectators, soldiers, Marines, sailors at parade rest. Making the turn into Henry Bacon Drive, the short few blocks that leads around to the Lincoln Memorial. Black car, flanked by Secret Service men. There is the artillery caisson. Bearing the body of President Kennedy. cortege resumes its progress, slow and inexorable, toward the final resting place. The momentary pauses are for the various units as they reach the circle to resume their proper spacing. Occasionally they will stop here on the memorial circle. The caisson now making the turn onto Henry Bacon Drive. Now coming into view here from the Lincoln Memorial are the first two horses of the 6 that are drawing the caisson toward the memorial, the bridge, and the cemetery. Here's the first car making the turn onto the memorial circle. The only sound here is the sound of the drum roll. Nothing from the crowd. Only reverent silence. Here's the turn by the caisson, 6 white horses. Now the caisson is on the memorial circle. A pause here now while the ranks reform and step out across the bridge in proper order and distance. And then moves again. caisson has now emerged from the shadows of the east side of the memorial to the full sun from the south and west. And the Potomac River will come into view just as the cortege rounds the southern quadrant of the circle. Now the caisson is on the base leg of the memorial bridge and starts its final journey across the river, a bridge that the president so often traveled on his trips to the airport to greet the visiting heads of state who are now here to escort him across.
Oh!